Hey everybody, welcome back to Gregtech Community Pack. So last episode we managed to get through most of the early EV chapter. We managed to complete the platinum line and set up our brand new distillation and fluid storage building. In this episode we're going to smash out tungsten steel, our RTM coils to upgrade our blast furnace to smelt all of that, unlock the PIC, smash out some EV machines, and finally fix the power situation with large gas turbines. So strap in, today's going to be a long one, and let's start with a little problem. We rely on our auto crafting system to manufacture almost everything in the base. Currently in our base, we are using medium voltage machines to complete all of our auto crafting. But over the course of 300 play hours, I've come to realize that the medium voltage machines are starting to become much too slow for the large crafts that we are going through. And in upgrading to extreme voltage, we do need some of our machines to be high voltage. Specifically for neodymium, we do need a high voltage polarizer to polarize the rods to make them into magnetic rods for the motors. Moving to medium voltage is also going to future-proof our base just a little bit more before we move into insane voltage and can finally make the multi-block crafting machines. We also want to add more assembling machines for our different fluids. We need one to coat cables. We need another machine to make our inert chemical reactor blocks. And this requires PTFE put in the chemical reactor. We also need one with ethylene in it. We're going to be putting down a lot of assemblers and we're going to be reusing our old ones as well. But for now, let's rip up our medium voltage wall and replace everything with high voltage. Let's move on to beginning the process of making our epoxy circuits, and we're going to start with our radon chemical reactor. We don't have the ingredients for it yet, but setting up the reactor means that once we do, we can just immediately start producing radon. As you can see, the process is pretty simple. Uranium-238, plutonium-241 with some air gives us the plutonium dust and radon. So plutonium is perfectly recycled and all we have to do is supply it with uranium. Now let's test our auto crafting system by requesting 10 EV machine hulls. Today's going to be slightly different to other episodes where pretty much we're going to be completely guided by the quest book. So if we take a look at the quest book right now, we want to finish the EV page and we want to move on to IV. So to upgrade our circuit tier, we need the EV circuit assembler, and this takes an EV emitter. We can actually make all of these now, but we can't make this because we need the quantum eye. The quantum eye needs radon, and you saw us setting up the chemical reactor, but to make radon in the chemical reactor we need uranium-238, and there's two ways to do this. And the first way is going to be our depleted uranium hexafluoride to get us this dust. But the second, and definitely not terrible way to do it, is to pulverize red granite. And you get a 0.1% chance at this. And red granite is made in an extreme voltage rock breaker. And you might be thinking I'm crazy for saying this. You'd be absolutely right. I'm still going to do it this way because I can't be bothered with uranium refinement. Sorry. So, to craft up the rock breaker, we've already made the hulls, we can make motors, we just need to make a piston and a diamond grinding head. So, we get the diamond grinding head. And now I've got the macerator as well. It's at this point I'm realizing that we probably need to make the EV assembling machine as well. And with some auto crafting later, we have our assembling machine. So the first thing we're going to do with our new assembling machine is we're going to make some EV batteries just so we can power some of these machines more continuously. The first step in making the Lapotron crystal is to make Lapotron dust, which is energium and lapis dust. We happen to have a big stockpile of that left, so let's just mix it all together. Circuit 2. And 10 seconds. Okay, so we've got the dust. Now we put it in autoclave and wait 60 seconds. 60 seconds later, we've got our Lapotron crystal. We'll add 2 high voltage circuits and wait another 30 seconds. Uh-oh. Well, that's not good. It's run out of power. And after a little bit of effort, we have our Lapotron crystal. And the quest. So we've set up our quick and dirty uranium setup. All we have to do is put the piece of red granite into the rock breaker and the macerator will do its thing. We want to run this at as high voltage as possible to get the maximum chance of dust. At extreme voltage, we have a 0.35% chance to get uranium-238 dust. Unfortunately, we actually can't generate enough power for this stuff. We only have 4 high voltage gas turbines underneath powering these crystals. So we're only going to let this run for until the batteries run out. But we'll put it in and we'll get it going. So if you actually remember how to use the rock breaker, you'll remember that there needs to be water and lava on either side. We'll tidy this up later, but for now, let's just get this on the road. So I've checked the batteries and we can actually run this permanently because this is only 960 EU per tick and this is 128. We can run this constantly and this will give us passive uranium. It's obviously going to take a very long time, but we can put up with very long time on a process that we don't have to ever check again. Okay, and we've given this storage drawer access to the network, which means that once we put some plutonium into our chemical reactor, we will have radon. Okay, and we've added in some plutonium and we can see that our radon creation is working. It does take 200 seconds though. Okay, and so now, every 200 seconds, we're going to get a bucket of radon for free. Thank you so much, Rockbreaker. And here we are, radon gas. With all of that done, we have our radon, and all we have to do is bathe Ender Eyes in 250 millibuckets of radon, and we get a Quantum Eye. And of course, it takes 24 seconds, because why would anything in this game be fast? So, with Quantum Eyes neatly in our pocket now, we're going to look at the circuit assembler. And you might be noticing a slight change in textures right now, and that's because I'm just in the middle of trying out the Gregtech refresh. I like this texture pack mostly just because of the updated circuit graphics. Definitely not sure how I feel about the motors, but looking at the wafer tab, I think this texture pack will be staying. Let's get to crafting the circuit assembler, and we can request almost everything here, which is pretty handy, but we'll make the emitter first. So we'll just request the items that we need, and we need to make 4 platinum rods. And with the emitter crafted, we can request the rest. And after a while of waiting, we finally have our EV circuit assembler. While we can't actually generate any extreme voltage power at the moment, we can just fill our battery buffers with 4 turbo gas turbines. So the next step in upgrading our circuit production is making nano CPUs, and this is what that second EV power line in the clean room is for. To make the nano CPU, we need to make the nano CPU wafer, which requires a CPU wafer, raw carbon fibers, and glow gas. Raw carbon fibers we can make using different plastics. We already have an autoclave in the clean room, so we can just reuse that one. It also takes glow gas, which again is just an extractor, so we can use a low voltage extractor. We'll use a high voltage for the sake of transforming, and then we need to smash that all together with a CPU wafer in the clean room. We get our nano CPU wafer, and then we can cut that into the nano CPUs, and then we can use that for all of our new circuits. And while all this has been going, we've accumulated another 5 buckets of radon gas. That rock breaking system is really working well. So we get the chemical reactor, the autoclave, and the extractor. And now all we have to do is place them down without exploding anything. And no explosions, thank goodness. Conveyor for import, and we've got our glow gas. Import the carbon. Import epoxy. We've got our carbon fibers. So now we set auto output into the chemical reactor. Okay, we won't be doing auto output because it'll fill up with carbon fibers. So we're going to need a robot arm. So the robot arm is incredibly useful because we can specify the exact amount of carbon fibers we want inside the chemical reactor. We set it to import, and now it's only ever going to allow 16 carbon fibers in there, stopping this from filling up the buffer. Because glow gas is a fluid and the nano CPU only requires a little bit, that's all good. We can just set that to auto output into the chemical reactor. Now, because we don't want to just passively generate these nano CPU wafers because they're pretty expensive and we don't want to void all of our CPU wafers into this, we're just going to set up a crafting recipe for it in the patterns. Just like this. And we're going to set it to 64 at a time so that we can just request 64 nano CPU wafers whenever we want. This will mean we never run out of CPU wafers, but we can still make enough nano CPU wafers. Alrighty. So, we'll request our 8 nano CPU wafers, and we'll check if they're working. And it looks like we've got everything right. It takes a whole minute of this, but after a minute we should see a nano CPU wafer get put into the interface and head straight to the cutting machine. And we're about to see the craft finish, and we have one of the crafts done. And that should automatically go into the cutting machine, and it has. 68 seconds later, we're going to get our first nano CPUs. So with the unlock of our new nano CPUs, let's encode the recipes for the better circuits. So we'll encode our high voltage recipe, and we have all of these on craft. Then we'll encode our EV. Again, we have all of these already on craft. Now with that done, let's request our first high voltage circuits using epoxy boards. Blisteringly fast. And we have our circuits. An achievement and a quest. And so what we'll do now is we'll also request the EV circuit for the quest. We've just completed the quest for the extreme voltage circuit. And there we go. And with cheaper circuits on the craft and some IV and LUV circuits in our back pocket, we're now going to work on the tungsten chain. So we're here on the End Islands because the first part of the tungsten chain is going to require either scheelite or tungstate. And we are currently standing on a scheelite vein. So we're going to place our miner down, and this is pretty simple for us at this point. We have an ender chest. I've forgotten one of the batteries. That's okay. We just use our high voltage miner and we send that straight into an ender chest which appears at our base. And we'll just chunk load it so that it can run in the background. So we need a chemical bath and an electrolyzer. So to add to our auto crafting patterns, we need to make platinum wire for the electrolyzers. If we check everything else, all we need to do is make some more tempered glass. So into the wire mill, we place our pattern for platinum wire. And for our tempered glass, we just throw glass in the arc furnace. And now we'll just be able to set up the auto crafting. Except we're missing round wafers. Okay, so I've prepared a little area mirroring our other blast furnace setup in preparation for crafting tungsten. So, the first step of this process, if we go to the right page here, is that we need to chemical bath to make tungstic acid. So we've got our chemical bath, then we need to electrolyze all the products, and we're going to buffer tungsten in a drawer. No other reason, I just think it's cool. So we need to place on our little chemical bath here an interface to request the items. We'll go down, and fluids to request the hydrochloric acid. And now the quest book does mention you need a chemical reactor to loop chlorine back into hydrochloric acid. We already do that, so we don't have to worry about it. So we can minimize the amount that this is going to take. Because these are two EV machines, we're going to power them with a battery buffer with 2 batteries in there to provide 2 amps. And then we need to power that. And right now, the only way we can generate extreme voltage power is to throw 4 turbo gas turbines. Pretty simple here. We can just send both products directly into the electrolyzer. But we're going to do something slightly different here. We're going to conveyor. We're going to conveyor 2. We're going to place conveyors on the drawer side and the bottom side. And I've just changed the block. We'll place our cable just so we can place the interface. And now we'll set filters. So for this filter, we just want tungsten dust, regular tungsten dust. And then for this filter, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we'll blacklist it instead. Because we get lithium and calcium, I think we also get chlorine here, so we will need to pump out the fluid as well on top. And we'll be able to cover this all with facades, and then we have one nice open drawer to buffer tungsten. And we'll place a storage bus on the backside in a sec. And light. So I forgot that you need to actually set the filter on a robot arm for it to pull in. Hopefully this will start to pull in and it doesn't just pull one. We actually do need to set this up to 7 so that it can then supply 7. Which it hasn't. That's supplied 16 and I have absolutely no idea why. There we go. Okay, now it's going to supply in multiples of 7. We saw all of that go through the electrolyzer. We'll press the X on this so that it runs that at it runs both at EV, I think. And now we have our tungsten dust. Okay, so the next step for our large gas turbines is going to be the extreme mixer. So let's get that. And we should just be able to request everything. Nice and simple. And with AE2 saying it's finished, we can grab it. And now with the mixer, we have access to RTM. So powering the mixer right now is going to be a little bit of a challenge because we don't have any extreme voltage lines. So we're back here in our clean room with our makeshift extreme voltage lines, just placing it on top, and we'll mix it up and then we'll move it when we're done. So RTM is relatively expensive, but it's not. T is for tungsten. We need 128 of it. So RTM alloy is made with ruthenium, tungsten, and molybdenum. We have a lot of ruthenium. I believe we have some molybdenum. That's not very much, unfortunate, but that's okay. But it is enough. And tungsten, which we're going to need 36 of, and we currently only have 12. So we have to wait for ore processing. We're going to take a little detour here from our RTM adventures to make the multi-block miner. We're going to take a detour here and use 16 of our newly found tungsten in our nichrome on-demand blast furnace. It takes 90 seconds each, so this is going to take a while. And we're going to make those into gears to make the basic ore drilling plant. And now, this ore drilling plant can mine in a 3x3 chunk radius, which is fantastic, but also ores are mined as if they were macerated, but yield 3 times as many crushed. So while we wait for more tungsten to cook up, we're going to need an EV machine hull. We need 4 titanium frame boxes, 4 EV circuits. We need 4 conveyors, 4 pumps, and 4 motors. Pumps and conveyors are done now. We grab the machine hull as well, and we're getting really close. Circuits, crafted up. Now we wait for tungsten. And now we finally have enough RTM to make the coil. The tungsten still isn't smelted up, but that's okay. So, as part of our RTM alloy coils, we actually need to make vanadium steel foil, and I figured we should just batch up as much as we can. So, we grab our extruder shape, and we put the tungsten through, and this is going to take 46 seconds each. Wow, that takes a long time. But we have everything to make the drilling rig. Okay, now we have everything for the ore drilling plant. We check circuit 2, machine hull, frame boxes, circuits, pump, motor, conveyor, gear. All done and only a 20-second craft. Isn't that nice? So, one of the things that the drilling rig needs, the multi-block miner, is it needs drilling fluid, and that's a really simple process. We'll take our creosote, distill it into lubricant, water, and stone dust gets us drilling fluid, and we can just accrue millions of this. We're going to need lots of it. And so we're just going to buffer it here in our old plastic room. Okay, so lots has happened since we last checked in. We had a stream that went on beforehand. I want to thank everybody for coming along for that stream. We managed to craft up all of our RTM alloy and make our blast furnace. So we've got our RTM alloy coils now. We're currently smelting up blue steel, tungsten steel, and ultimate. Nice and quickly, I might add, with the new coils. We also managed to get our prized possession, our large gas turbine, up and running. currently turned off because we actually don't have it connected. We're currently using an ultimate rotor. It's one of the cheaper materials we can make and provides good power and efficiency. We'll replace it with the high-speed steel variants when we get to that, but for now, ultimate's going to work perfectly fine. I've got it written down here that the turbines produce 6,553 EU per tick at EV tier. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to run 6 gas turbines into a large insane voltage battery buffer. And we'll use these Lapatronic orbs, which are very expensive, but we will use these to store the power. I think we'll start with 4 of them, so 4 amps of IV power. And while on stream, we also set up cryogenic air distillation. It's not the most beautiful setup in the world, but it works. We just import air, freeze it, and out of that distillation, we get lots of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, helium, and argon. And we're really just looking for helium and argon because those are used in our blast furnaces to speed up, tungsten steel gets sped up by helium gas, vanadium, RTM. All of the newer and more expensive materials will be cooled by helium. And eventually, they'll be cooled by argon. So, all of our LUV plus materials. We also reused our old ethylene wall to make styrene butadiene rubber. So we put benzene and ethylene to make styrene. We mix that with butadiene and oxygen to make the pulp. And then the pulp gets combined with sulfur to make the rubber. We had a little bit of an accident when making the rubber. We ended up with 1,500 pulp just sitting around in our storage because we forgot to put a machine controller on the bottom of the chemical reactor. So we have used up almost all of our butadiene. And we also set up the large miner on a tantalite vein. We don't have ore processing at the moment, so a lot of this is just going to be sitting around doing nothing at the moment until we can get into insane voltage and do ore processing. But that is for next episode, not this episode. So, for the rest of this episode, we're going to expand up our large gas turbines, set up the power, and I'm going to rewire the base. And I think that about wraps up today's episode. We've got our 6 large gas turbines producing 39,246 EU per tick. We've got our 16x IV battery buffer with 4 Lapotron crystals in there for a total storage of 1 billion EU. We've got our RTM coil blast furnace. And we've managed to get ourselves tungsten steel, almost all of the nano circuits. And we've basically finished off the EV quest page. Next episode, we're going to work on the alloy blast furnace. We'll probably look at upgrading the blast furnaces as well. And moving on to insane voltage, which is a pretty daunting quest page. And with our new multi-block miner, I think it's time we get into ore processing as well. So, if you like the sounds of that, make sure to subscribe, like, and follow along for more.